Across the Fence, a simple demonstration that shows us a lot about water, soil, and runoff. We'll get an up-close look at a rainfall simulator and learn why it's an important tool that can help protect our natural resources. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Whether you're a commercial farmer or a backyard gardener, soil is your most important ally. Good soil not only boosts productivity, it also reduces erosion and improves water quality. To prove the point, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, provides a seeing is believing demonstration. Keith Silva was along for the demonstration as NRCS soil conservationists got started.
It's going in a lot easier.
Aaron Pratt and Sarah LaRose are soil conservationists with the National Resources Conservation Service in St. Albans.
This is usually like the hardest sample to get because it doesn't hold together because there's no roots.
Pratt and LaRose are looking for a soil sample to be used in a rainfall simulator. They're digging in this cornfield to find a good example of a bad agricultural practice.
So this is a sample from a cornfield that's been in corn continuously for 40 years.
This sample will be used to show how much water runs off and infiltrates the soil when 2 inches of rain falls on it per hour.
This is a rainfall simulator, and the buckets in front basically are going to show the runoff from the different types of soil samples that we have here, and the buckets in the back are going to show the infiltration rates to the different types of soils that we have.
The sample from the cornfield goes alongside another similar example of exposed and aggressively tilled soil. There are also 2 other soil samples in this demonstration. Both of those examples represent ground that's received minimal tillage and has been managed using cover crops. Once the simulation starts and the water begins to soak in, or not, the results are obvious.
It's such a good visual of where your soil is going when it's not covered that it might make them think twice about just tilling everything up and leaving everything bare, because the soil is basically what they need in order to make their crops. And if the soil keeps leaving their properties, then they're basically losing their own livelihood.
The practice of growing the same crop on the same acreage year after year is known as monocropping. In addition to increasing the chance for erosion, monocropping also decreases soil health. Rotational grazing, growing different crops on the same acreage, increases soil health, promotes biodiversity, and keeps the ground covered to prevent erosion.
This is a simulator. It gives us that visual. It helps us understand what is going on in that rainstorm. It boils down those messages about cover, about diversity of different crops, about the importance of having roots in the soil, different roots, diversity of roots, all those really important things that make a healthy living soil. That is what we can see as we're running this rainfall simulator. We can see the results of that and why it can help us keep our lake clean. It can help us have water in our soils for those drought times. You know, it really helps us both in terms of production on the farm, but then also in reducing those environmental impacts off of the farm.
The greatest asset of every farm is its topsoil. It's in those top 2 to 8 inches where a farmer's fortunes are won or lost. Impacts like planting and plowing, farming, expose topsoil. So making sure those practices are properly managed goes a long way to improving soil health.
What I'm trying to turn this into, it's going to look visually like chocolate cake. It's going to look so good you want to eat it.
Eric Noel raises beef cattle on Health Hero Farm in South Hero. Noel is a longtime practitioner of soil conservation techniques like pasturing, crop rotation, and minimal tillage.
I always look for root causes because you find a root cause of something, you fix that, and you take care of a lot of other problems around once you find the root cause. And I figured out that you fix the soil, you get the fertility up, and you get it so it's like chocolate cake, and it'll infiltrate, and you get increased forage volume, increased nutrient density in the forage, which goes to getting more feed into the cattle, more nutrient-dense feed into the cattle, which increases their weight gain. So it goes to the bottom line of the beef production also.
Noel and his family moved from a farm in Highgate to this farm in South Hero about a year and a half ago. When they started getting the land ready for production, Noel knew it was going to take something heroic to get the soil to meet his needs.
This is our second growing season, and last year what we started with was nutrients that were very low, especially phosphorus, which is energy into the plant. And over the course of 2 growing seasons, we've done some amendments and some practices, and year on year we've increased the weight gain on cattle by 15%. Last year we were topping out about 1.7 pounds a day gain. This year we're pretty close to 2 pounds a day gain on the cattle, which is what I want.
Noel knows what he does with his soil goes beyond his farm gate and puts him on the same footing as his fellow Vermonters.
No matter where you are, you're in a watershed, and when the rain falls, it's going to end up someplace. So it matters to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer, if you're a landowner, a developer, or somebody that lives in the city. Doesn't matter. If you've got land and water hits it and rain hits it, you need to be thinking about this stuff, because the water is going to end up someplace. If you're not utilizing it and soaking it up where you are, it's going to run off for the most part, because a lot of the practices we use right now with farming and development and roads and highways, they don't think about what the water's doing.
This demonstration proves there's nothing muddy about this debate.
There's no way to hide it. There's no way to say, well, that really isn't the issue. It's very clear, or not so clear.
When it comes to the conservation of natural resources, everyone is on even ground. In South Hero, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith. Joining me now are Corey Brink from the NRCS Field Office in St. Albans and Jen Colby from the University of Vermont's Center for Sustainable Agriculture. Welcome to both of you. Well, the video showed an example of a not-so-great soil from a Vermont farm field. Is that farmer now making changes?
That farmer actually agreed to let us take his sample because he's actually planted quite a lot of pasture in the last several years. He's been working with Extension, with a grazing specialist, and also with NRCS. So this is the last corn land that they had from their old practices. And
so he's obviously seen the light as far as...
He's definitely, this was an extra good example of why to change.
Is the practice of tilling common, and is that necessarily always bad for the soil?
It's certainly common to till, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the thing folks should try to strive for is to minimize tillage. Every time the soil is disturbed, the bacteria that's in the soil consumes the glues that hold the soil together to keep it strong, and the organic matter that assures good infiltration and high returns as well, as far as yields and things of that nature.
And so what's the difference between soil quality and soil health?
NRCS kind of views them similarly. So basically it's the continued capacity for the soil to function as a vital ecosystem. So the soil, just like ecosystems in nature in general, is an ecosystem. So there's different types of critters in the soil food web that make it a complete system. So if there's anything that breaks down in that system, everything else will kind of suffer as well. So the main thing that you're looking for is the ability to infiltrate water, to hold water, and to build organic matter as well.
And so is encouraging soil health, it's good, but is it something that we can all do? I mean, we use this example of a farm, but I mean, on the tape it said anybody who has any land.
I think Eric's point is a really great one, because anybody who manages any kind of land, whether that is a lawn or a park or a farm or anything, we can let the grass grow a little taller, we can minimize tillage, we can feed the soil and get carbon into the soil to feed all those microorganisms.
Yeah, I mean, just myself as an example, I need to practice what I preach. 1,000-square-foot garden at home, it's 90% no-till. I'm working on it. I'm not 100% yet, but I'm getting there. Yeah.
We talk about tilling. If you don't till, then what are some of the options to tilling? I mean, isn't that an important part of planting?
Definitely for crops, there's certainly been a great movement in no-till, which is depositing seed in mechanically. There's also, I mean, a lot of the cover crops, folks who are doing cropping now are adding in cover crops so that they can no-till in that corn, and they can keep the soil covered and reduce tillage at the same time. So there's a lot of really great options there now.
Yeah, so the planting is a tillage in a way, if it's a very small amount. And so if folks can just strive to do it less, they're going to hold more organic matter, which has a cascading effect, which often folks have been doing it long enough can even have less herbicides, in some cases no herbicides and chemicals.
Is it just getting the word out, education, that there's a different way to do it as opposed to the way it's been done for generations, maybe?
I think it kind of depends where you are in the world. You know, part of the world I come from, it's fairly common. I come from a farm where we have 1,000 acres of no-till. We've been doing it for 15 years. It's a learning curve. It's not easy. You got to do it for a while. You have to get used to it, accustomed to it, and keep learning. So it is something that is possible, but it's not easy at first, for sure.
And I think people need to see that their friends and neighbors have been able to do it successfully. You know, there are people who are willing to take the leap. Eric Noel's a great example of somebody who takes leaps, but that's why he is a demonstration farm in many ways, because so that other people can see how it's worked for him, and then they will try things too.
Is cost an issue when it comes to changing some of your practices on the farm?
Yeah, because for instance, you'd have to get a no-till planter. But there are some great options for folks. I believe UVM, as a matter of fact, has a no-till planter that's available for farmers to utilize for a very, very low cost, or even maybe even. I know it's very low cost then, you're right. But so yeah, there's lots of assistance. There's assistance with NRCS in the form of cost share to help offset some of those costs as well. So 75 to up to 90% cost share for folks.
Talk a little bit about why soil health is so important for water quality.
Well, as you could see in the previous taping with Sarah and Aaron, soil health is important because the more organic matter you have in the soil, the more it's going to infiltrate. The water's going to infiltrate. The more it's going to be stored for a time when you might need it, as in a drought situation. The cleaner the water is going to come out of the infiltration side, and the less water is going to go over land flow. The more water that's going off your land, the more things that are going away with it. So.
And you could definitely see that in the rainfall simulation between the two different corn treatments and the two different pasture treatments, and how the water went through with the pasture much more and over much more with the corn. Right. It was basically what we hoped to see in the demonstration, and it did show what we expected to see.
And so you use the term soil food web. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's well, it's kind of like I was mentioning earlier. It's basically the ecosystem within the soil, and it's composed of things like nematodes, arthropods, bacteria, fungi, and they all, some of them consume each other. It's just basically the web of life in the soil. And just as within nature, if you break down the pieces of this ecosystem, things start to suffer. The health starts to suffer, and symptoms of that are erosion, loss of fertilizers and nutrients that you're putting on your fields, and increased erosion. So.
How does carbon fit into the picture?
So it's that water holding capacity. That's multiple ways, but two really big ways in the context of today. One, it holds more water. A 1% increase in soil carbon increases the water holding capacity by 16,000 gallons of water per acre. Wow. So it's like, that's a big number. And the other piece is carbon is what feeds the whole food web. So we need carbon in the soil to keep those little critters fed.
Corey, where can viewers find out more information about NRCS and the work that you do, and maybe seeing a simulator in action?
Sure. So the best way, if you want to find your local service center, is to call our state office and get your number from there. So it'd be 802-951-6796. And you could also get a hold of us on our website, wealth of information on there, www.nrcs.usda.gov. If you look for soil health awareness, I believe is the tab. There's just there's just endless
Tons of stuff.
information
It's
on
great.
there. Yeah.
And Jen, how about your work with the Pasture program at UVM Center for Sustainable Agriculture?
So we're at www.uvm.edu/pasture, and my number is 802-656-0858.
Well, thank you both
Contact
for
me
joining
anytime.
us today.
Thank you so
you.
much.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.